through the end of the third trimester.
DiPietro says the terms viability, healthcare provider, and patient's health are not defined. According to DiPietro, these are key terms that are unprecedented in Florida constitutional ballot initiatives.
Most initiatives, whether good or bad, whether we agree with them or not, most of them have extensive pages of definitions and implementation guidelines, procedures. The amendment language, and this is literally like 2 sentences long, that is going to go into our state constitution. The legislature will have no authorization to limit or restrict or implement the actual amendment language. So it's going to see common sense safety laws gutted completely. We're going to see, again, the term viability is not defined.
That alone has caused confusion.
They thought they were supporting a heartbeat bill.
Organizations asking people to vote yes on Amendment 4 include Floridians Protecting Freedom, the ACLU of Florida, and Planned Parenthood organizations in Florida. I'm Chris Woodward.
More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty P.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe that our ministry, as well as everything in the heavens and on earth, belongs to God, and our role is that of a trusted manager.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And good morning, everyone, to today's issues. It is Tuesday, August 27. I am sitting in for Tim Wildman this week and joined in studio by number one son, Wesley Wildman.
That's right, number one son. I was just thinking, with Dad not being here, obviously, in most days he's the head host here of today's issues. He's not here, so what would keep us from just talking about whatever we want to talk about? Hockey, baseball, travel ball,
nothing,
hunting,
nothing.
Passions of our own.
Nothing would stop us from doing that.
You wouldn't know
on our last day here at AFA.
That's right. Okay.
Now, you are passionate about hunting. As soon as you said that, Brent Creeley, our producer, he pointed at you. He's passionate about hunting.
Yeah, these are some extracurricular activities or hobbies that I enjoy. I enjoy hunting. I enjoy coaching my son's baseball team. We get together and do competitive baseball here locally in our area, and I enjoy being out there with the boys and doing something different. So I have my own set of fun things I like to do outside of work, but you know what? You're right. We don't want it to be our last day, so we're going to get back on message.
I discovered that you were a huge hunting fan.
Mm-hmm.
We went on a trip somewhere. We were flying somewhere.
Tells you what you know about hunting when you call it a hunting fan. Okay, go ahead.
Admittedly, I'm not a hunting guy.
Fan, yeah.
But I was seated next to you.
Yeah.
And we're waiting to, before we take off.
It was like your first introduction of asking me about.
Well, popped open your laptop, and we're checking your trail
cameras,
photos.
maps,
yes,
notes.
I thought, what are you, a Navy SEAL?
Yeah, right.
What is this? What are you doing? It was all about hunting. So
I got some good memories though. With my granddad on my mom's side introduced me to the woods and outdoors and hunting and camping and all that. So there are a lot of memories are built with dads and fathers and sons and granddads and grandsons out there in the woods. So enjoyed it.
Yeah, that brings back painful memories for me. My dad used to go hunting and didn't take me.
Yeah, painful memories.
Yeah, so thanks for that.
Because you didn't like it because it was cold, I'm sure.
No, it wasn't. It was because my dad, when he went hunting, it was with his friends at work.
Okay.
And they would go up to mountains and it was just kind
of
his
because
way
you
to
were
get away.
A pansy.
No, I probably would have wound up liking hunting.
Okay, yeah.
And now we are talking.
Yeah.
So I'll move us along from my painful memories that Wesley has dredged up from the depths of my soul. Chris Woodward joins us. Now,
Hello.
Chris, you like hunting?
I have never actually been deer hunting. I have been squirrel hunting and other things, but I've never actually. I'm not opposed to it. I enjoy eating deer. It's fantastic food. but I've never actually been deer hunting. I don't know that, like, could you sit in the deer stand with like ear pods at a very low volume or something? Okay.
Yeah, that wouldn't be an
I
issue.
would need to listen to like a podcast or a ball game or something.
Yeah.
Although a ball game might not be good for me because I might yell
Might
out.
yell.
Hey!
Well, nowadays with iPads, when I'll usually take a couple of the bigger kids.
Yeah.
And take them an iPad. Watch something, play a game on there, and then
Good.
when deer come out, hey, be still, don't move.
Still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Teach them.
Yeah.
Teach them to be.
so
quiet.
yeah, Chris, you could take an iPad too.
Sit there and update AFN.net
That's
There you
right.
go.
as I watch for deer.
Speaking of AFN.net,
Yes.
hey, what's the first story of the day?
Well, I was told many weeks and months ago by President Tim Wildman to bring in something good every once in a while. So we do have a good news story to begin with. Israel has rescued another hostage abducted by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. This man is 52-year-old Qaid Farhan al-Qadi, if I said his name correctly. He was one of 8 people of Israel's Arab Bedouin minority who were abducted on October 7th. He was working at a guard at a factory that was overrun by Hamas terrorists, and he is the father of 11 children. And nearly a year after he was abducted, he was found alive and is in hospital, as Fred would say. And he has been reunited with his family. No doubt a very good story here, and I have shared that on our Facebook page.
And that, Wesley, that is almost a year. We're talking about October 7th. One of us mentioned here before the show started, as we were just preparing for it to start, there's no telling what this guy is going to tell the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and others in the Israeli intelligence branch. But what happened to a lot of these hostages? I'm sure there's going to be some horror stories.
Yeah, be some. I would expect some horror stories. Also, I'd expect for them, hopefully, maybe some intel or something that may help the Israeli security. Hopefully. Chris, now I didn't catch this, and I hadn't read the full story. So how did he get recovered or found? Did he manage to escape, or did they unshackle him from chains, or how did they find him?
I don't have that information in the AP story on our website, but
it's
we will
being
be
called a
updating that.
complex operation. So there's
Okay,
Wesley,
so
your point,
first
it may be a
days.
lot of moving parts. They were able to pinpoint him apparently from some intelligence. So I'm guessing maybe somebody told them. Told the IDF or intelligence.
They had a hostage over here.
Yeah, and we think that he's located. They were able to pinpoint it,
Right.
and then they said in a complex operation in southern Gaza, they were able to free Qaid Farhan al-Qadi.
Yep.
So listen,
Well, I guess
good for his family.
Yeah, and I wonder, does that mean? I mean, that makes you think. Well, there are probably some more hostages still alive, right? Or
I would hope so.
I hope so. Yeah.
Because a lot of us have wondered if these folks are dead because
Right.
it's been so long.
Well, and the newsman in me, sometimes I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful, but at the same time, you got the odds are not in your favor.
Yeah, we covered this. I looked this up about a month ago on Today's Issues Live. I forgot what the numbers were, but there were a percentage that they said were still alive, and it said in there that the reason they thought they were alive is because they had been seen or there'd been evidence of hostages still alive. So hopefully there's more stories like this in the coming days that we can report on.
That's right. All right. Well, we are going to, before we hit any more stories, we want to welcome to the program one of our, I'm sure our show's listeners' favorite guests that we have on is Dr. Frank Turek, host of Cross Examined, heard Saturdays on American Family Radio at 9 a.m. Central Time, and Sunday the show is repeated at 4 p.m. Central Time. Frank, welcome back to Today's Issues.
Gentlemen, how is everyone today?
Yeah, doing
Doing
well.
well.
I
Doing
think
well.
we're doing,
As Dave Ramsey would say, better than I deserve.
yeah, there you go. How are you doing, and where are you located? Are you on the road, or are you at home, or what?
I'm just south of Charlotte, but next week we'll be at the University of Texas at Dallas. That's September 5th. Then I'll be at Calvary Chapel, Tucson with my friend Charlie Kirk and Pastor Robert Furrow. And then on September 9th, we'll be at Arizona State University down there in Tempe, Arizona. So we're starting up our college tour doing I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist.
Sun Devils need Jesus, Frank.
They do. We all do, don't
Yes.
we?
Amen.
Hey, I do get to, I do watch sometimes videos of you on college campuses. I don't always check the dates, so I don't know how old some of these are. But interesting, you mentioned you're going to be with Charlie Kirk. He's getting some play too. He's very well known, obviously, but he goes on college campuses a lot too. So just tell me before we do have a question, something we want to discuss with you, but how is it on college campuses today? And have things changed dramatically from, say, 5 years ago, or is it still kind of the same challenge? Let's put it that way.
Well, I would say that now, Ed, the top 3 objections to Christianity on college campuses are morality, morality, and morality. In other words, people are objecting to what they perceive to be Christian morality. Of course, they have no standard by which to judge Christian morality, because if there is no God, there is nothing ultimately right or wrong. Everything's just a matter of opinion. But they will come out and say that, Christian prohibitions on, say, abortion or homosexuality or whatever are somehow immoral. These people don't realize they're stealing a moral standard from God to even say anything is moral or immoral. So I'm always asking them questions. Well, what's your moral standard? Why do you think that's true? Why do you think that's right? They are unwittingly stealing a standard from God while claiming he doesn't exist. In effect, they have to sit in God's lap to slap his face.
So how do they respond? And I have seen some videos, so I know, but our listeners probably don't. How do these college kids respond when you challenge them on their right to judge Christian morality without a moral standard of their own? How do they respond?
I think it's kind of the same way for anybody, Ed, when you think about it. I think it's kind of the same response that Paul had on Mars Hill. Some believe, some mock, and some say, well, I'll hear you again.
Yeah.
Those are the 3.
Interesting.
It's either I agree with you, I don't agree with you, or I'll consider it.
Hey, I got a question. How complicated has it been for y'all to get on college campuses? I guess it would determine the college, but how complicated has it been?
Well, we just need a Christian group to invite us. So
Okay.
it's easy. If a Christian group is on a state-funded school, they can't say no. The state-funded schools can't say no. But we just need a Christian group on campus to invite us. That's how we get invited on. So if anybody is at a college campus right now in a Christian group, just go to crossexamine.org. That's crossexamine with a D on the end of it, and .org, and then invite us to campus, and we'll figure out a way to get there. We don't charge students anything.
So an example would be like Baptist Student Union if they were interested at.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Or Ratio Christi, or Crew,
that's
or
right.
InterVarsity, or BCM. Any of these groups can invite us.
That's wonderful.
And you usually have a pretty good turnout at these?
Yeah, we do. We get anywhere from, say, 250 to. We had one at Purdue. We had 1,200. So it really just depends.
Wonderful.
That's outstanding.
It really just depends on how well it's promoted. I'd say probably the average, Ed, is probably like 350, 400 people.
Yeah.
So.
That's great.
Good.
That's
Yeah.
great. Hey, well, listen, folks, if you're tuning in just now, we are speaking with Dr. Frank Turek, host of Cross Examined, heard Saturdays at 9 a.m. Central Time, Sundays at 4 p.m. Central Time on AFR. And Frank, we did want to talk to you about something that I saw this morning, and I'm going to let Chris Woodward set this up with a little bit of audio.
Sorry, Ed. It's Christopher.
Yeah.
Christopher.
Christopher, Ed.
Christopher.
Christ Bear.
Yeah.
There you go.
3 people on this planet call me Christopher, and Frank is one of them. The other are Tim and my mom. But anyway, so a big story on Fox, and understandably so. Human Rights Campaign President Kelly Robinson, who is also an ally of Vice President Kamala Harris, she spoke at a recent panel discussion at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. And as often the case, people say things, and then a few days go by, and people get the video, and these become stories. And this is why. In this video that we're about to play, or this piece of audio, Kelly Robinson urges a reimagining of so-called democracy beyond the Constitution at this panel discussion. Clip 4.
We can't just worry about protecting democracy. In this moment, we've got to reimagine it with people that look and love like us at the center. And I think for us right now, it's about reimagining freedom and this American story in a way that is more revolutionary than what our founders actually put down on that little piece of paper, but instead is the type of democracy that is by and for all of the people of this country. That's the opportunity that we have.
Now, Frank, the reason this struck me is, to me, the clear and obvious disdain that this individual, again, this is the president of the Human Rights Campaign, you said?
Kelly Robinson.
Christopher.
Yeah,
the clear disdain she had for the Constitution, calling it a little piece of paper. Other people have referred to little pieces of paper before. This just seemed striking to me, and it seemed to indicate, as if we needed any further proof, that the radical left, their intentions are to get rid of that little piece of paper and replace it with something else. What's your take?
Well, there's only two ways to govern, by principle or power. Now, the Constitution is principle. You have what we agree to be basic human rights in the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights. If we're going to ignore that, and we're going to say we don't have any standard by which we're governing ourselves, but our own whims, then it's all about power. That's why the left does not want to debate so many issues. They want to cancel the debate because they can't win on principle. They can't win by arguing their position. They can only win by implementing what they want through the raw abuse of power. So if they can get rid of the Constitution, then they can get away, or they can get rid of the First Amendment, which says that Congress shall pass no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. See, she's from the so-called Human Rights Campaign, which is really not about human rights. It's just about whatever the LGBTQ community wants. And when so-called gay rights come against, say, religious rights, they think that gay rights must always overpower religious rights. So you don't have a right to your view if it in any way interferes with what someone who identifies as LGBTQ wants. And if you notice in her quote here, Ed, what I found very interesting, in addition to her just dismissing the Constitution as just a piece of paper, she said this: we can't just worry about protecting democracy. All right, let me stop right here. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic, a representative republic, but I'll give her grace on that. I understand what she's saying, okay? And by the way, she's saying this at a convention where the nominee did not get one vote. Right. They kicked the guy out who got all the votes and said, here's our new nominee.
Right.
All right?
Let's not forget that.
But here's the next interesting statement. She said, in this moment, we've got to reimagine it with people that look and love like us at the center. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to break this to you, but you cannot establish a civilization on homosexuality.
Right.
Yeah.
It's impossible. We would be, if that is the center, that's what she said, with people that look and love like us at the center. There's no civilization that can survive if homosexuality is at the center.
And that's what I was going to ask you, Frank.
Yeah.
What do you think she means by look like and love like? Because you and I both know, and we all know here, that defining words matter.
Right.
And when you go to college campuses, that's one of the first things I've seen you do is let's define what you mean by fill in the blank. And in this case, she says look like or love like. What do you think she means by that?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what it seems to me she's saying at the center, as if same-sex relationships ought to be elevated above every other relationship by the force of law, which is what the so-called Equality Act will do.
Right.
That's what you'll get if you get Democrats in the White House and the Congress. You'll get the so-called Equality Act, which is not equality at all. It means that everything LGBTQ would usurp heterosexual relationships, which is the complete inverse of what any society can tolerate. Forget the Bible for a second. We're not even talking about the Bible here. We're talking about just basic biology, right? This is just men and women coming together, procreating and nurturing the next generation. You can't do that through homosexuality. And so they're thinking, and by the way, we should not be surprised.
You said that unapologetically.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at Romans chapter 1, where Paul says, if you suppress the truth in unrighteousness to go your own way, particularly on the sexual issues, God will give you over to futile thinking. This is futile thinking right here.
Yeah.
Okay? To think you can establish at the center of a society on homosexuality. It's impossible.
Or more even drill down a little deeper, a society built on rebellion against God.
Yes,
That doesn't end well.
No,
because that's part of the Romans 1 point. Look, just broadly speaking, because the Democratic Party and those on the left, especially the radical left wing of that party, which is increasingly growing in numbers, it seems to me that when you talk about governing a society based on principle as opposed to power, the Constitution, according to its principles, restricts the power of the federal government.
Yes,
that's
what the Bill of Rights
it
all about.
separates separation of powers, checks and balances, because the founding fathers, those men that she spoke about in such a disdainful way, they understood you cannot aggregate power in the hands of a few. You've got to disperse the power. But the left, including the points that she was making, the left increasingly wants to grab all the power and claw it towards the middle where they sit. And it seems to me that is laying out a blueprint for what they actually want to do. And I don't want to overspeak and say it's necessarily communist or fascist, but it seems to be heading in that direction.
Well, it's certainly going against the natural order of things. It's going against natural law. And what we mean by natural law, I'm not talking about gravity here. I'm talking about the design of the body and how our bodies were made to interact with one another. That's quite obvious, and yet people want to somehow rebel against that. And when they do so, this is why, by the way, the Apostle Paul says sexual sin is the only sin where you're rebelling against your own body, in effect.
Right.
And that seems to be what he means. It's going against how nature or how God created us.
Go ahead, Chris.
I have a question there, Frank. When we have you on from time to time to talk about cultural issues or governmental issues, crazy things in government that are a result of culture falling away from the Lord, you have at times mentioned that, and I'm paraphrasing, it's the church's fault. Yeah. So is some of what we're discussing here the result of people replacing the swift kick in the pants that Americans used to get in church with the 7 ways on how to have a great week?
Yeah, I think so, Christopher. I think you're absolutely right, because we're not about making disciples anymore. We're about amusing the goats rather than feeding the sheep. And I had a question that is on our podcast that'll come out today. It's not broadcast here on AFR, but you can listen to it in the same place you might hear the AFR podcast. Just look for the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist podcast. It's going to air this afternoon. Because I had a question from someone saying, I wanted to set up a voter registration table in my church, and I'm getting all sorts of pushback. And one of the aspects of the pushback was, well, we don't want to be divisive. We want this to be a welcoming place for all people. So how do you respond to that objection? And my response is, this is the mistake we make when we think the church is primarily for unbelievers. The church is not for unbelievers. Yeah. The church is for believers. Now, we want to be as welcoming as possible, but we're not going to change our doctrine in order to welcome people into a belief system that we're not honest about. This isn't bait and switch. Right. We're not supposed to have such an attractive model that we're attracting people to the culture rather than attracting people to Christ. We have to say, here's what we believe and why we believe it. And we're not going to change the doctrine to attract people into the church. We're going to be welcoming, but we're going to say, hey, this is what we believe, and here's why. So this idea that we couldn't even have a church registration or a table in a church to register people to vote because that would be divisive is not loving our neighbor, because we want to love our neighbor. We want to make sure that we put laws in place to protect innocent people from evil. And if we don't register Christians to vote, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and on that topic, the burden is not on the person who's interested in putting up a registration to be divisive or not be divisive. That's the thing that I've had discussions with people, and it's frustrating because they're so concerned about causing division when in reality they're just living out their faith. Mm-hmm. And you go, well, why are you carrying around the burden of other people not happy with what you're doing when you're just following the scriptures?
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be worried about that. Now, obviously, you want to go as much as possible live at peace with all men, and you want to be able to do so in a way that's constructive and informative and helpful. But at the same time, at the end of the day, there are parts of your faith as a Christian from Scripture that other people are not going to agree with, and that's okay.
Yeah. In fact, Jesus said that I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. I'm going to divide mother and daughter, father and son. And many people listening to us right now realize that passage is true because we're divided in our own family over Jesus, and we ought to be. Yeah. He didn't come to bring unity with the world. He came to bring unity in the church. By the way, I love the iVoter site. Can you tell us the website for that?
Yeah, that's iVoterGuide.com.
Right. iVoterGuide.com. Friends, you need to go there, put your address in. It'll tell you exactly where the candidates stand. It's great.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate you mentioning that. iVoterGuide.com.
Hey, when is that going to be complete for the feds? No, I mean, when are the...
They are. I think they are working to compare the platforms, and then I think it's going to be up. That part will be up.
I thought you meant for the feds. Like, okay.
Yeah. Hey, give us real quickly your website, Frank.
Crossexamine.org. Crossexamine with a D on the end of it.org. Invite us to church. Invite us to campus. We'll be there.
We'll be right back, folks.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. Those are words of Paul. He was a lad in the town of Cremona, Italy, in the middle of the 17th century. Cremona was a musical town, and great acclaim was given to those who could sing or play. Wanting to be accepted and given some recognition for his musical talents, he tried singing. His friends called him Squeaky Voice, and he soon realized that his singing would never be anything special. The young lad then tried to learn to play, but his success wasn't much better than his singing. So he was a dejected youngster as he walked through the streets of Cremona with his friends and listened to their beautiful voices. About the only thing the lad could do was to whittle on a block of wood with his knife. One day he was sitting on the edge of a street whittling as three of his friends played and sang beautiful songs for the people passing by. Appreciating the musical ability of his friends, many people dropped some small coins into their hands to reward them for their efforts. One gentleman stopped longer than many of the others and even asked the friends to sing a song again. After they finished, he dropped a coin into the hand of the singer. Then he moved on down the street. Upon looking, the boys discovered that it was a gold coin. It was quite a piece of money to give to a street singer. But the man who gave it could afford to do so. "Who was he?" asked the lad who whittled. "It was Amante," his friend with the beautiful voice replied. "Amante who?" asked the lad. "Niccolo Amante," the friend replied. "He's the greatest violin maker in all of Italy." That evening at home, the lad thought about the man by the name of Niccolo Amante. He was a man who succeeded in the musical field, but he neither sang nor played. The more he thought about the violin maker, the more he became convinced that he wanted to become a violin maker. He wanted to become the best violin maker in all of Italy. Well, early the next morning, the lad hurried off to the home of Niccolo Amante. He sat on the doorstep and waited for the great violin maker to come out. When Amante came out, the lad told him that he wanted to become a violin maker and asked Amante if he'd teach him how to make violins. He explained to Amante that he couldn't sing or play, but that he could whittle. And more than anything else, he wanted to make violins. Amante accepted the young lad as a pupil, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. The young man studied from the master. In due time, his work became known in Cremona and then Italy and finally throughout the whole world. You know, we may not have the talent to do some things as well as other people, but God has given us all a very special talent, which, if we will develop, can help us help others. Antonio Stradivari found this to be true. Even to this very day, men still make music with his violins, and they pay upwards of $100,000 to do so. Just because you can't sing or play doesn't mean you can't make music.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. Psalm 139, 23 through 24.
American Family Radio.
This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
And welcome back to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. Joining me in studio, Wesley Wildman and Christopher Woodward. Folks,
thank you, Woodward.
Yes. Before the end of the break, we had Dr. Frank Turek on, always outstanding. But he did ask a question there at the end about the iVoter Guide. iVoter Guide is, we work, AFR work in conjunction with the great folks at iVoter Guide, which is, I guess, a division of AFA Action.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And so we kind of were rushed at the end of the, just before the break. Before early voting starts, we will have at iVoter Guide a comparison of the political party platforms and information related to the choices that folks need to make at the federal level. And I guess probably what Frank was talking about was the presidential race between former President Donald Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris. So all that information is scheduled to be up before early voting begins in your state. If you go to iVoterGuide.com, iVoter Guide has information. If you're not registered, it has information. Maybe you're embarrassed, okay? There's a lot of folks who have not been in the habit of voting, and they're embarrassed to ask somebody and to admit they're not registered, okay? We get that. You can go to iVoter Guide and check your state, find the deadlines for getting registered and how to do that, and you may be able to. I've been registered to vote since just after I got out of high school, so it's been a while since I've had to visit one of those. You may be able to even do that online and in your state, but all that information will be provided for you at iVoterGuide.com. All right, Christopher. I hope I don't have to call you Christopher from now on.
You can call me whatever you want as long as I keep a job.
All right.
I'll pick up your dry cleaning. I told Tim the same thing.
Okay.
I'll even make the popcorn.
All right.
But anyway, I want to direct people to another story, and this could very well have been the lead story earlier in the program. It's on our website. It's everywhere. Mark Zuckerberg, the chief executive officer of Meta, says senior Biden administration officials pressured Facebook to censor, his words, some COVID-19 content during the pandemic and vowed that the social media giant would push back if it faced such demands again. In a letter to Representative Jim Jordan, the Republican chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Zuckerberg alleges that the officials, including those from the White House, repeatedly pressured Facebook for months to take down certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire. He even went on to say that they pressured him and Facebook, otherwise known as Meta, to also downplay the Hunter Biden laptop story, which is something that goes back years, even before they arrived in the White House. I will post images and links and everything I just set up here on our Facebook page. But in the meantime, let's play a little bit of audio. This is Representative Laurel Lee, a Republican out of Florida, on Fox and Friends today, talking about the Zuck situation. Clip 1.
I mean, the whole idea of the First Amendment is that it allows us to express contrary ideas, to bring those out into the public square and let the public get to the bottom of what's the correct information. And what's worse, history tells this story, and we now know what the data shows us about the fact that there were effective therapeutics, the fact that it was appropriate to be prioritizing seniors and the vulnerable. So, not only was it wrong for them to try to suppress opposing viewpoints, the actual data that we now have related to the pandemic demonstrates that these positions they were suppressing, that many of them were actually correct, and that the public would have benefited from having them out there and getting the option to make their own choices.
Yeah. So this is something that we have talked about. We thought it was happening. There have been some allegations put out there, statements made by members of Congress. Now we have the letter from the head of the company himself going, yeah, this happened.
And I will say this. I was reading in fact, I turned there now, an opinion piece from Jonathan Turley, who is a professor of law at George Washington University's law school. He's a contributor to Fox. He writes on topics related to the Bill of Rights, all sorts of things. Wesley, he's critical of Mark Zuckerberg, and this is what he says. He says Zuckerberg's sudden regret only came after his company fought for years to conceal the evidence of its work with the governor to censor opposing views.
Well, yeah, it looks like he's got caught, and now he's wanting to throw everybody under the bus, as opposed to the obvious, which is he didn't have a problem with this at the time, and he didn't have a problem with it until he got caught, or with hard evidence.
Yes.
And it's funny because it seems to me like truth is finally catching up with some people's conspiracy theories like myself at times, because we felt and knew this was going on all the time, all along. We felt that way, but now we have the evidence. So
yes,
truth is catching up with some people's old conspiracies.
In fact, Jonathan Turley says in this piece, he says it had talking about Zuckerberg's belated contrition, he says it had all the genuine regret of a stalker found hiding under the bed of a victim.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did. Listen, your point is really salient here because we all felt this. Now, I will give kudos to you because you were one of the first people that I know out of the gate who started talking about the cover-up that was going on from the official, quote-unquote, government position on COVID and the vaccines and the masks, all that stuff, the social distancing. You were one of the first to unapologetically say something's wrong here, and it's especially we know it's wrong because they won't let contrary views out. Okay, so
you couldn't the moment you couldn't get a doctor's second opinion.
Yes,
there were a dozen things like that began uncovered, daily, or that you go, wait a minute, we always ask, everybody gets a second, I say everybody, most people feel at liberty to get a second doctor's opinion. And so when that was off the table, along with other things like that, that's when you go, wait a minute, something's off here. Because even when you go and have any form of an illness, they'll say, well, we've checked everything. I'm not sure, but the symptoms look like this, but you may want to go
get a second opinion. Yeah. And so the deeper problem here, Chris, you as one of our news guys, you've been covering this story now, but we're talking, it's over 4 years.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. That we've been dealing with what happened, what actually happened to the world back during COVID. But at least equal to, but maybe a deeper problem is social media's conspiring, the social media companies conspiring with the federal government. And this is why Zuckerberg's forced admission is important to this discussion, because we now know we can't trust these people.
Right.
We can't trust these people. I trust Elon Musk because he wants there to be freedom of discussion on X, formerly known as Twitter.
Right.
But the Mark Zuckerbergs, I don't trust this guy as far as I can throw him.
Yeah. It's all the more reason to pay attention to stories that involve like heads of companies, even former heads of companies.
Like
that
Bill
still,
Gates.
Yeah, that still have close relationships with the companies they helped create and make a lot of money. Because a lot of big tech executives, for example, happen to be big corporate donors for Democrats running for office. Case in point, in recent days, Business Insider had this story. Google, Netflix, OpenAI executives to host Kamala Harris fundraiser. So Google executives. I mentioned Google because we've already had the stories out there where Google was making it to where if you were to Google Trump assassination attempt, you would find like Kamala Harris stories and things like that. It just completely ignored it. Now, they went on to explain it away and talk about an algorithm and okay.
Nobody believes them anymore.
Exactly, because it's the umpteenth example of big tech doing something to where people can't be up to speed on things.
Listen, AFA has been shadow banned for years by Facebook.
That's right.
We were saying this even before COVID. All right.
This goes back. What you're saying goes back a minimum of 10 years. I've been here 11, and the first 2 years I was here, our Facebook numbers grew exponentially.
Yes.
And then within just a day, everything shut off.
Yes.
By and large.
It was clear someone had turned off the faucet.
It was that obvious.
Yes.
And that's been going on at least 8 or 9 years.
Our listeners get frustrated if they are Facebook users. A post, they'll post something and it is blocked or otherwise removed because it doesn't meet these quote unquote
guidelines,
community guidelines, and you never find out why. No. Same thing with YouTube. All these groups are increasingly under suspicion from freedom-loving Americans because they are not playing the game the way we thought the game was being played. And Zuckerberg, listen, I don't trust Bill Gates.
Oh no.
You know, these people, these really wealthy people that I have to believe now, I sound like a conspiracy nut, but I have to believe they have a compound built somewhere far away in case of some sort of disaster. They're in it to preserve themselves. They don't care about me or my family.
Well, just hit the highlights here and go back to the bullet points of what we just discussed about. So Mark Zuckerberg admitted 3 things in this that we talked about these. The Biden-Harris administration, quote, pressured Facebook to censor Americans. Facebook did censor Americans, and then Facebook also throttled the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Correct.
Meaning that in the event that they let it run its course as natural, then the Hunter Biden laptop would have been more of a story discussed across all America, not just within the conservative movement.
Ed, we all remember the 50 or so members or former members of the intelligence branches signing this letter. Do you remember? I think was it 50 or I forget the number, where they said this has the Hunter Biden laptop story has all the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation story.
Yep.
And that's what led all these social media companies to block the story.
Well, it's also disturbing. Another point here is the fact that the federal government would get involved in private businesses to tell them what they can and can't say.
Yes,
that's horrifying.
And so now I'm sitting here going, okay, I don't trust these big social media companies.
Yeah.
Now I can't trust my own government.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is where we're at in 2024. I'm not sure that wasn't me.
A very special today's issues.
That's right.
Anyway, maybe that's just God's way of telling me to just take a step back, take a deep breath from this. But
no, I'm glad that we brought this story up because this needs to be understood amongst our listening audience and all that we can get this in front of. That this is not a conspiracy anymore. This is not. This is Mark Zuckerberg admitting that the federal government pressured him to do certain things as it relates to specifically the COVID issue. And we all know there were countless things we were uncovering week by week, month by month that would help people.
Yes,
it would help people.
You remember the Zuckerbucks? Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook giving money to go into big cities and register voters. But the fact of the matter is, it was Democrats.
It's right.
That they were okay. So, so there are an increasing number of us in the middle and on the conservative side that maybe it's taken some folks a long time to come to this, but we understand who's for us and who's against us.
Yep.
It's worth pointing out that some of the people that pressured Facebook/Meta to do this are the same ones out there telling us this election is about freedom and saving democracy.
Yes.
Or they work for those people that
point.
want us to believe this election, and they're the ones using a big-name company to squelch information.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Let's move on.
Well, let's do this story here. I found this in a post yesterday from a journalist by the name of Kyle Becker, who's worked for various big-name news outlets. Kyle shared this video of Vice President Harris being asked a question by a reporter about former President Trump and his thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. And you can tell from the video, I'll share the link to it, but you can tell from the video and even the audio I'm about to play that Vice President Harris was not prepared for this, nor did she have notes on how best to answer this question from a reporter, which, by the way, it's very rare to her to even speak to reporters, but nonetheless, clip 2 here.
On a different front, Axios this week reported that President Trump, if he gets a second term, will sort of dial back, for lack of a better term, DEI programs that the Biden administration has put in forth. I know you disagree with that. I obviously believe that you don't want him to get a second term. That said, if that does happen, what do you think that would do to race relations in this country?
Well, let me say we're going to win, so it's not going to happen. But I think that, listen, today is actually, I believe, an anniversary in terms of Dr. King, right? And I was just in Selma, and we acknowledged the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. I think it's really important that we as Americans always embrace our history, the parts that we're proud of and the parts that we're not proud of, but that we can't forget. And we should all agree that we should teach history. We should learn history if we're to ever have an accurate idea of where we want to go and where we don't want to go in the future. And that means also acknowledging the importance of diversity. It means acknowledging the importance of the fact that everyone should have equal opportunity to compete and equity. And then, of course, inclusion, that, hey, let's look around the room and see who's not here, and did we leave the door open?
Okay, first, Wesley.
Let Walls do the speaking.
I'm sorry, folks, I don't mean this to sound sexist, okay, because I love the sound of some women talking, okay?
Sure.
I do. This is not because Kamala Harris is a woman. Her voice is irritating. And other than the fact that I don't want communism to prosper in our country for the next 4 years, I don't want to listen to that voice for the next 4 years or that cackle. All right.
Yeah.
That's a personal thing. That may be
preference.
ad hominem, okay? I apologize if people are offended by that. Her voice just irritates me. However, Kamala Harris is in trouble in any setting where she has to think on her feet and sound like she is competent with the issues.
That's right.
Because she's not.
There were several, and I just did it, but I'm not running for president here,
right?
Okay, I just did what I'm about to criticize her for. She has all kind of filler words.
Yes,
that's way too many, and that's not even a hostile situation,
right?
I mean, you got an upcoming debate, potentially more than one, but I don't think they'll do more than one.
Yeah,
and then you've got at some point you got to think. Even if it's the week before, at some point she's got to do an interview, don't you think?
Right.
And now again, we've talked about playing with one hand behind your back. She's not going to have the hostile interviewed questions if it's one-on-one or in that sense, but at minimum a debate. And if not, and if she doesn't take on any form of a hostile interview or debate, I do think that actually hurts her. I think her campaign thinks that hiding her, kind of doing the Joe Biden 2020 thing is a strategy. And there's days I can see how that would be the best thing. But on the other hand, this is such an important election. I even think the other side wants to know something because we didn't vote for you.
Right.
You know, you got put into all. You got put here. You got put here.
Yes.
You didn't get elected here. So I do think that at some point she's going to have to and back to what you just heard in the clip there, she's going to have a hard time when those couple of days come where she has to do the debate or potentially tough questions in an interview. She's going to really struggle.
Yeah. And listen,
and that's not a surprise.
There may be friends of Kamala Harris who say she's a great person and she's really smart. Okay, lots of smart people aren't smart enough to be president.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So you can be smart, you can be intelligent. I have no idea what her IQ is. Okay, this is not a comment about her IQ. I'm saying my opinion from what I've seen is she is in way over her head.
Mm-hmm.
And she is not competent to be president. She may have been competent to be vice president. I don't think so. She may have been competent to be the attorney general of the state of California. Maybe. Okay. But she's not competent to fill the position of the president of the United States. And the fact that the same media who knowingly and purposefully covered for a president who was in cognitive decline, Joe Biden, they knew it the whole time and covered for him, are now covering for a woman who is not competent to be president.
Right.
It's almost criminal that they're doing this, but because of the First Amendment, guess what? You get to cover for a Manchurian candidate like Kamala Harris.
In other news from the campaign trail, this did not come as a shock to many people, but Donald Trump did get another endorsement yesterday from a Democrat. Former representative and 2020 presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii endorsed Trump at an event, a National Guard Association meeting in Detroit, Michigan, of all places. And this morning, Tulsi Gabbard was still defending her endorsement, despite many people being upset with her. Clip 6.
It's not about Democrats versus Republicans. Right. It's about having a president who stands for freedom, peace, and prosperity, which is Donald Trump, versus having a president in Kamala Harris who attacks our freedoms and censors us and uses political retaliation, who has pushed us to the brink of war, and who's created this economic hardship for Americans across the country.
All right, so I talked to my son, Tony. He came into my office this morning, Wesley, and this is what he said. I thought it was hilarious. He said, "So Trump is assembling the Avengers," because he's pulling these people in like RFK Jr.
That's right.
And then now Tulsi Gabbard, and it does kind of have this feel that he's pulling people in from different political backgrounds
that may have not also liked each other at one point.
Right.
Yeah.
But
have
now
a common
they
ground.
realize the choice. Really, this is a little bit hyperbolic, but I'm not opposed to using hyperbole. The choice really kind of is between Trump and communism.
Yeah.
And so that's why you've got people like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard going, you know what? It's not even that I'm against the Democratic Party. It's that I'm against these people who are on the far left trying to take us down a road that none of us want to go down.
Yeah, I think that's what you're saying. And I do think this helps him a lot. I think it helps because he, not to go down a rabbit hole here, but Trump doesn't help himself sometimes. So I think getting endorsements like this does help him kind of offset some of his setbacks at times. And of course, with the RFK, that was big. Was that 2 days ago? A couple days ago?
Yeah, it was the day after the Democratic convention. Friday. Yeah.
Gotcha. And their reasonings, if you listen to them, their reasonings make sense. There are a lot of the points that we discuss on today's issues and other places on AFR, and that you're hearing in other conservative news outlets, and they're sharing some of the same sentiments that we have. That ultimately it comes down to what you just described, and I'm kind of putting words in their mouth here, but what I'm hearing is we can survive with Trump. Maybe don't like him in many ways, because they are different parties.
Right.
Tulsi Gabbard and
former
President Donald Trump, but at the same time, we can't survive, and it's unmanageable if we continue to allow 8 million people into our border.
Right.
I would imagine for Tulsi, and I don't know this for sure, but just knowing what little I know about her, I'm guessing the border's probably a big deal to her.
And the wars.
And the wars, that's a big deal. Her endorsement is a good thing for Trump, and I look forward to seeing where this goes from here. Because do we have any more potential endorsements that could be in this tight camp, like an Avengers?
Well,
like your analogy.
I thought that was just a brilliant way of putting it.
I don't know if any of superheroes are going to vote for him, but I will say RFK said not long after his endorsement on Friday that other Democrats would follow his lead. So we could see more people.
He's probably, because he was talking to Trump for a while before this big announcement on Friday.
Correct.
And it was kind of the hand, he had tipped his hand at the beginning of the week. But before all that, he had been talking to Trump. So he's probably been talking to other people as well who are thinking of endorsing Trump. Anyway, I just thought it was a funny way to put it. Tip of the hat to my son for that.
Yeah,
Trump
it'd be interesting.
is assembling the Avengers.
It'd be interesting to compare the endorsements of the people who are endorsing Harris versus former President Trump.
Yeah.
I'd like to, because you've seen some of the people that she's partnered with.
Yeah. Right. So, all right. So, hey, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break for news. We will be right back with more of today's issues.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio. When you hear us mention the AFR app, you probably think about your smartphone. We do have apps for Apple and Android users, but it doesn't stop there. If you have an Alexa, we've got you covered. But wait, there's more. Sorry. There's also an AFR app for Roku or Apple TV. So many ways you can listen to your favorite show, podcast, or music. Find out more at afr.net/apps.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Fighting continues in the Middle East as Israel launches a new round of airstrikes. Trey Yinks has the latest from Tel Aviv.
With the war grinding on, new evacuation orders were given to Palestinians in central Gaza yesterday and early this morning. These orders included the evacuation of a hospital that houses wounded and vulnerable Gazans. The war in Gaza continues amid the backdrop of an ongoing tension that continues to rise in northern Israel. The Israelis released new video of their preemptive strikes over the weekend that targeted Hezbollah. The exchange of fire is ongoing with fresh Israeli airstrikes on Monday and overnight, along with rocket and drone alerts sounding in northern Israel. Officials here say that there are parallel diplomatic efforts ongoing to try and avert a larger crisis between Israel and Hezbollah.
An Israeli hostage has been released after 325 days in Hamas captivity. The Israel Security Agency and the IDF announcing today that 52-year-old Qaid Farhan al-Qadi was rescued in what they say was a complex operation in the southern Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed al-Qadi home in a video message.
We do this in two main ways, through negotiations and rescue operations. Both ways together require our military presence on the ground and unceasing military pressure on Hamas. We will continue these efforts until we bring everyone home.
A panel of Republican congressmen determined to get to the bottom of the Secret Service failures of July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, met at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. to talk to some experts. Steve Jordahl reports.
Republicans Andy Biggs, Eli Crane, Matt Gaetz, Corey Mills, and Chip Roy don't think the bipartisan committee to investigate the attempted assassination of Donald Trump is getting results fast enough, so they convened a forum with experts in personal protection. One of the witnesses was former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino, who said there are three things organizationally that have to change with the Secret Service.
First, they have a technology problem. Second, the more with less approach. There is no more with less, there's less with less, okay? Third, their agents can figure out how to do protection without running out cheap $20 counterfeit notes at 7-Eleven on a Friday night while the president's getting shot in the head.
Bongino said the Trump detail had complained to management that they needed more agents and assets. He says the requests were routinely denied because, in his opinion, the agency's been politicized and strongly opposed the GOP presidential candidate.
I absolutely believe Donald Trump and an enhanced security posture he should have had would have made him look more presidential. And they were making some of these decisions based purely on grade school level politics.
Congressman Corey Mills was even more to the point.
You will see at this stage where I think that criminal gross negligence and purposeful intent will be indistinguishable.
Congressman Matt Gaetz asked if appropriate changes were being made.
Mr. Bongino, in your opinion, is the Secret Service in a better spot today with Director Rowe in charge?
No, it's worse. And sadly, you think this is the last incident, you're out of your mind.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
3 years after the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan, White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby says he still rejects claims that the process was chaotic. Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin says it was.
When they say it wasn't a chaos, it was complete chaos. From the moment that they started evacuating people, which, by the way, they shut down evacuations a day early.
13 U.S. service members were killed during the evacuation. States across the U.S. are seeing an increase in a deadly virus. Steve Harrigan has more from Atlanta.
It's been a rough go for Dr. Anthony Fauci, the former chief science advisor to President Biden. He had West Nile virus. It put him in the hospital for 6 days. He's out now recovering at home. The 83-year-old, according to a spokesperson, said to make a full recovery. But West Nile virus can at times be fatal. You have to get it only from a mosquito that has fed on an infected bird. And then that mosquito has to bite a human. It cannot be transmitted directly from human to human. The CDC has recorded more than 200 cases. Often the symptoms are fever and chills, but many times, almost 80%, there are no symptoms at all.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those 3 keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I'm joined in studio by Wesley Wildman and now Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Steve. And again, your shirt, is that Paisley?
It is Paisley.
It is Paisley, okay. That looks is that a new shirt? It looks a little bit.
It was new at one point, but no.
Okay,
I've worn
all right.
it before.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, welcome into the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
What's up news-wise?
Oh, man, nothing happening in the world. It's like boring out there.
It is. It's
nothing,
boring.
Nothing to talk about. Maybe hunting. Let's start.
Well, we already did that.
I was
last
distracted
hour.
for a minute in y'all's opening conversation, but now I'm back engaged again. Did I hear hunting?
I saw a headline. I thought of you, Wesley. I don't have the story here, but it said that gun violence is up at the beginning of every hunting season.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, people, there are some people that should probably go to a hunter safety course before they go out hunting for the first time or something, because that's where you get some accidents. So everybody be safe. Hunting season's around the corner, October 1st. Some states it's already opened up, but in most states, archery opens up October 1st. So have fun, but it's not worth getting injured over, so be careful.
That's right.
All right. You hear that, Dick Cheney? Good. All right. So yesterday, a congressional delegation of some Republicans and Democrats went to Butler, Pennsylvania to look at the site of the assassination attempt of President Trump. It is part of a special task force that has been put together. They're keeping their findings and their presumptions close to the vest. They're not saying a whole lot, but what they did say is several of them expressed astonishment at how close the rooftop that Crooks shot from was to the stage.
Yes, where President Trump was.
He was speaking, right. 430 feet. That might even be reachable by a bow. Right?
A bow?
Yeah.
30 feet?
400
feet? No chance.
Okay. So anyway, they declined to answer the question about preliminary findings. They were skeptical of reports that Crooks might have not acted alone. They say there's no evidence at this point for that. They are going to be giving a report later on. But
is anybody fired yet? That's all I care about.
no, they put several people on hold in the Pittsburgh Secret Service office. A lot of people say that's scapegoating.
Yeah.
So there were
on hold. What do you mean? Just
did I say they suspended them?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they suspended.
That's closer. We're getting there.
I know. I know. English is a hard language.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Republicans are a little impatient with this committee and decided to go on their own. They held a panel discussion. It wasn't a hearing because they weren't empowered to put anybody under oath or issue, but they had a panel, and in that panel, they asked a couple people, some experts, to come. One of whom was Dan Bongino.
Okay.
Because he's a former Secret Service agent, former instructor at the Secret Service Academy.
I didn't know that he was an instructor.
He was for 2 or 3 years. So, what did they find? Well, the first thing you're going to hear here is Dan Bongino talking about if he had to choose or to make systemic changes at the Secret Service, what would he do? And he lists 3 things that they have to do. I can go into detail about them later if you want. But then after that, you're going to hear from Representative Corey Mills. You're going to hear from Representative Matt Gaetz talking with Mr. Bongino. And it's what they have to say is astonishing to me. Cut 12.
First, they have a technology problem. Second, the more with less approach. There is no more with less. There's less with less, okay? Third, their agents can figure out how to do protection without running out cheap $20 counterfeit notes at 7-Eleven on a Friday night while the president's getting shot in the head.
Mr. Bongino, in your opinion, is the Secret Service in a better spot today with Director Rowe in charge?
No, it's worse. And sadly, I'm glad this is all being recorded, because when something else happens, and I hope it doesn't, you think this is the last incident, you're out of your mind.
You will see at this stage where I think that criminal gross negligence and purposeful intent will be indistinguishable.
I absolutely believe Donald Trump and an enhanced security posture he should have had would have made him look more presidential. And they were making some of these decisions based purely on grade school level politics.
So,
all right, help us sort out some of this. I don't understand the third change that Bongino said should be made, but the counterfeit money, what was that all about?
The Secret Service is still tracking down counterfeit money. He says,
as part of their job.
Part of their job. As part of the Secret Service legacy job. He says the time is well past that they should pawn that off to some other department and focus on protecting the
Treasury Department or so, or
right.
FBI.
They used to be part of the Treasury Department. Now they're part of Homeland Security.
Right.
But they still maintained their investigative duties with regard to counterfeiting, which doesn't make sense in these days.
So that was Bongino's point on that.
That was Bongino's point on that.
Okay.
So the other thing you heard him say is that he believed that Donald Trump had an enhanced security if he was given more. Now, he was denied, his detail asked several times, we need more people. We need more people. We don't have enough people. This is the most threatened man on the planet right now.
Yeah.
And they were denying him more coverage. And Bongino says that he believes that Donald Trump and an enhanced security posture he should have had would have made him more presidential. That's why they denied it, because they didn't want him to look presidential. So that's why Corey Mills was saying at this stage, there's no difference between gross criminal negligence and purposeful intent. Did they intend to get him killed? I mean,
that's what Corey Mills is saying.
That's what he's saying. So, look what they've done already. They've started with impeachments, with fake news, with the files of Russian disinformation that were made up completely. They
talking about back to the Steele dossier.
Yeah, Steele dossier. They impeached him twice. That didn't really work. Then they went to lawfare, and they literally charged him with like a bunch of made-up crimes, people that ran specifically on getting Donald Trump.
Right.
And they couldn't do that. All those are falling apart. This is the next logical thing in Corey Mills's mind. If you really think that Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler, then it wouldn't surprise you if someone said, well, we need to make sure he doesn't make it to the White House.
We need to stop Adolf Hitler. You know, Wesley, it's uncomfortable for me. I have always loved my country and always defended it. In some ways, I've changed some of my opinions. I've changed my opinion about the war against Iraq because of all the information that's come out about that. I have changed my mind on a lot of things, but it is uncomfortable for me to not trust my own government. And under the Biden administration, I have come to not trust at least those who are in league with Biden-Harris in weaponizing the federal government against their political opponents. And now we've got this thing, and the more I read about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, the more suspicious I get. I'm suspicious about what happened on January 6th, J6, as it's famously called. I want to have answers about, was there federal FBI involvement in stoking the flames to get people to go in and tear stuff up? I don't have satisfactory answers, and it's uncomfortable for me to be this suspicious of my own government.
Yeah, it is. And obviously we're still, unfortunately, I don't understand how we still don't have all the information that's necessary to make a decision on this type of stuff.
A decision as in what exactly happened?
No, and a decision as, well, yes, that's part of it. Yes, lay out the details, what happened in a way that someone who's in charge can make a decision on what we're going to do with the individuals that were in charge, and what are we going to do differently moving forward. You know what I'm saying? It seems to me like it's an ongoing investigation to the point where days go by and we forget about it.
How many weeks passed? That was on July. When was that?
That was
middle of July.
Yeah, July 7th.
We're about out of August.
Yeah, we're out of August.
July 13th. So, Dan Bongino.
Here's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. So last week, here's an example of what I'm saying. So last week we get the audio 3 weeks later that the local police department is on body cam going, I met with, we played the audio. I met with the Secret Service. They said they had the roof covered. We met on Tuesday. They said the local police said, we'll do it. They said, no, we've got it covered. Let it go.
Yeah.
So, like, why are we finding that kind of stuff out 3 weeks later?
Right.
What kind of investigation is needed? What kind of privacy or what kind of legal issues could there possibly be that we can't get to this? We're talking about an attempted. The president was shot.
Right.
Okay. Like, this should be an easy get in there, figure it out within a week. Lay out all the information and somebody be held responsible, and this is what we're going to do different moving forward.
Listen, I want to know who this kid was talking to. He's got these encrypted this software, these apps that have apparently encryption powers that are beyond maybe they are that tough. I don't know. Am I wrong? You guys can answer this. Did I not read a story about the fact that there is video of Crooks on that rooftop? It looks like he's texting someone.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen the texting part.
Okay.
He might have been. He's got offshore accounts that he haven't been able to access.
Listen, his body was cremated, it seems to me, before the autopsy could be done. All this kind of stuff. I'm just sitting here going, come on, man. This stinks to high heaven.
To listen to the people who kind of know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Ronald Rowe, who is now the acting director
the Secret Service.
Of the Secret Service, who replaced the lady that resigned,
yes,
was not fired, was directly responsible for denying Donald Trump some of this coverage. Directly responsible.
Secret Service
protection. He is in the middle of the whole thing. Therefore, these people that I'm listening to say he's still in a cover your behind mode. He's still trying to cover up things and to see how little he can damage the Secret Service or his own hide, basically. So,
listen, we had Kimberly Cheadle, who was the acting director of the Secret Service. In the aftermath of this, everything she said as an explanation for it proved to be wrong.
Right.
Yeah. Listen. This is like as I said at the top of this discussion. This makes me very uncomfortable. And I'm not saying it's the federal government. It is who's in charge of the federal government that has been using it for their own personal political gain. And we almost had the leading the Republican candidate for president assassinated.
Yeah. So
in July,
there is an ad hoc a Republican committee they put together, I think, on the weaponization of federal government. That's what we need. This outside of the Butler, the Secret Service may apparently have been one of those agencies that was weaponized.
Yeah.
But that the FBI, the DOJ, all of these people have been weaponized. That's the question you need to ask.
Because one or two options has happened here. One or two options. One, somebody failed to do their job, or two, somebody looked the other way.
Yes.
So that's the reason I'm saying I need more. We got one of them has to be decided on, and it has to be decided on later or sooner than 4 weeks later.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm open for somebody not failing to do their job or being incompetent. I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, my point is, I'm not so conspiratorial that I'm not gonna listen to you.
Right.
If you've got evidence to say this person, he was on a lunch break and he was doing something naughty he wasn't supposed to.
Right.
And that's the reason it got left open. Okay. But otherwise, you got to prove that, because right now you're leaving option 2 open, which is somebody look the other way.
Yeah. Ordinarily, for a mistake this big, you have 3 options.
Okay.
Okay. You have somebody look the other way.
Yep.
All right. In other words, they were taking part in
right.
it. Number 2, they were just incompetent. Or number 3, they don't have the policies or personnel in place. It's not incompetence; they're just understaffed, undermanned, or whatever. Okay, that's no longer a part. That's not an option.
That's right. There you go.
So it is these 2 choices: incompetence or someone looked the other way. And the longer this goes on, the more I think it's not just incompetence, because they didn't have the perimeter secured. We have video of people saying, "Listen, we just tried to find a parking spot. We drove around. We parked by the fence and just walked in. No one even challenged us. I could have had a bazooka."
Yep.
And so now I'm leaning towards somebody look the other way.
So Representative Corey Mills, you heard in this clip we just played, he said,
Dad's not here to stop us.
Yes.
From the conspiratorial side.
Well, that's right.
He said, "You will see at this stage that I think criminal gross negligence and purposeful intent will be indistinguishable." Another way to say that is, it is impossible to fail that profoundly.
Yeah,
it's
right.
impossible to not.
And we've heard that from many people that have that were either, I say in the profession, they were either top level military. We've had top level military and top level snipers, top level people who have served in some capacity in the military that can speak with great confidence on this issue, and they would say the same thing. Look, that's the first thing you do. That's the first building you clear. If you look at a map, that's the first thing. That's number 1.
Even non-professionals like these members of Congress could tell this is close. Listen, all this stuff that we're talking about in terms of the quote-unquote incompetence, then you tell me that the conversations between the people on the ground, all that's been deleted?
Yes.
And there was no communication between the Secret Service and local police in real time.
Yeah. Listen.
Yeah.
Wesley raises a good point. We probably need to kind of walk back a little bit from the precipice, but this is very concerning. And if it wasn't for people like Senator Grassley,
that's right,
from Iowa, and these other members of Congress, this story would have died.
Yeah. Yes.
And it would have been memory hole.
Shockingly.
Yes, shockingly. All right.
Just a couple more things I want to get to. The electric vehicle push by the Democrats and Kamala, the Green New Deal.
I'll bet it's going well.
It's going so well. Ford has decided it is not going to make a three-row electrical crossover. In fact, Ford is in deep trouble. Ford is losing $44,000 on every EV it sells. It expects to be on track to lose $5 billion this year alone.
Wow.
On electric vehicles.
Now, why are they we talked about this. I didn't know the $5 billion thing till you just mentioned it. We did say we were going to talk about this story in our story meeting. So I didn't ask you this. I don't know that you'll have the answer to it. Why are they losing so much money on each vehicle?
Nobody wants to buy the vehicles.
Oh, I see.
And,
all right.
So market. If the thing costs $100,000 and nobody's willing to pay more than $60,000,
okay,
then you just lost $40,000 on that one car, and you've got tons of inventory. You can't move.
This is a real world rebuke to the Green New Deal folks who promised that this was going to save the planet, because it's not working. Nobody wants it. Rental car companies don't want these.
The technology's
Customers,
not there yet.
The technology's not there. It's too expensive. There's not enough of the infrastructure necessary to carry this, and people are going to hybrids because that's the only choice they have. I think I told the story that my wife and I were looking. There was an accident. One of our cars got totaled, and everyone was fine, but we were looking to replace it. I've always had kind of a soft spot for Toyota Camrys, so we went to one of the local car dealerships that has Camrys, and I wanted to buy a used Camry if I could find one, because they last forever. Excuse me. But they told me that I was met as soon as you step on a dealership lot, you get people coming up. And this young man was very nice, but I said I was looking for used Camrys. And he said, "Well, we have several over here." And he said, "But how about a brand new Camry?" And I said, "I don't want to buy it." But he said, "Well, here we have gas powered. We have 8 brand new Camrys. This is it. After this, no more. It's all hybrids. All the new cars are hybrids." And I said, "You won't have any more just purely gas powered?" Nope. So everyone's going to hybrids because the federal government is making them.
They are doing better than straight EVs.
Right.
Elon Musk's notwithstanding. I have nothing against electric vehicles. I've test driven a Tesla, and it was one of the most exciting things I've ever done. As far as
we have people here that work here who drive EVs. They love they like
rocket ship.
Good for you.
It's not saving the environment.
Right.
All right. College football season starting. You guys, I'm sure, are all rooting for your favorite team. How's State going to do this year?
They're going to do really bad.
They're going to do really
bad at football. Yep.
Okay.
No, it's unfortunate. We've added Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC meaning the team I cheer for and pull for all my life, Mississippi State University, as if they needed any more competition. They certainly got it. So, new coach, new season, attitude, top tier teams. It's going to be very difficult.
So one of the
thanks for asking, though.
I'm glad we brought that up. One of the coaches that people have been looking at and watching ever since last year when he took over the job at Colorado, University of Colorado, was Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
Prime time. Coach Prime,
right.
They call him. Now,
Great
I don't know
athlete.
where he was when he was a player, but as a coach and as now, he is a very committed Christian.
Yes, he is.
Very disciplined.
Very disciplined, very committed, and he's committed to making his players better people. And this is an example. I want you to hear. So one of his things that he wants to stress is fatherhood, the importance of fatherhood. And so he gave some examples of why fatherhood is important. And then he played this for them. And then this is an audio of what he said next to them about what the Bible says about fatherhood. Cut 10.
The Bible is my navigation system of life. This references fatherhood with the word father appearing over 1,100 times in Scripture. So what does this tell me? The significant role in God's eyes is father.
The significant role in God's eyes of fatherhood. That's what
He's telling his players that.
Tells the players. Then he invited up a lady from a bank, 5430 Bank in the Front Range, Colorado Alliance, and he called the players who were fathers that had children up to the front, and he gave each one of them a savings account with $1,221. His playing number was 21 in the NFL. And the lady from the bank then told them about compounding interest, and if they add money to it, how you could make the money work for you to be responsible managers of money.
Yeah.
But that's where his heart is, and that's where his pocketbook went.
How much was it?
$1,221 per child.
21 was his number.
It was set aside specifically for the children as they got older as a savings account.
I just think that what a testimony, what a great thing to do for these young men who have children. And it's, college is not beyond belief that people in college would have kids. And listen, our country cannot ever prosper again unless families become important to the culture.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about biological mother and father with their kids. I know that's not always possible. There are divorces and remarriages and blended families and single parents. I understand all that. But for our country to prosper, the what we call the nuclear family, that's the family that God designed, needs to be at the center of our culture's priorities.
Amen and amen.
Sure does. Every time I hear him, one of the first things I think about is priorities.
Yeah.
Gotta have your priorities on.
Right. That's all the time we have for today, folks. More great programming directly ahead on American Family Radio. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.